Series in the book of Exodus. And today is actually a new beginning, basically, for the book of Exodus. You've seen this whole journey of how Israel, they were in captivity, and then through the different signs and wonders, God brought them out. God brought them through. And then, but here's the thing, it started off where God and Moses, they had this conversation, right? We've talked about this, where God was speaking to Moses from the bush. And this is the conversation, or part of the conversation that they had. Yahweh said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because they're slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of Israel has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. That mountain is Mount Sinai. Right? So we've seen the people that were struggling. God saw they were struggling. God called Moses. God brought them out of Egypt. They've been in the desert for several months, and now they've arrived. They've had this thing happen. Imagine being Moses, going through everything that's gone on. He's seeing how, or he saw how God worked, the signs and the wonders. He would take the staff and it would turn into a snake, or he raised the staff and the water parts. He's seen all of these different things. He saw signs and wonders, but this is his sign. This is the thing that he's been waiting for. Everything else was unexpected along the way, but this is the thing. This is the moment. Moses is with the nation of Israel at the base of Mount Sinai. And so actually in the text, you actually see how it slows down a little bit. And you kind of get this like triumphant feeling. On the first day of the third month, after Israelites left Egypt, on that very day, they came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out from Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Not just any mountain, the mountain. And why was it the mountain? Because again, this is the mountain that God said, when you are here, you will know that I am the one that brought you out. God's saying, this is all on me. You might have done all of these things. You might have been there, part of the process, but this is all on me. God's saying he's faithful and he's true. So right off the hop, that's something that we can get from this. God is faithful and he's true. No matter what you're going through, no matter what you're facing, God is faithful, he is true. He brought them to this point. He brought Moses to this point. He who started it is faithful to complete it. He will do it. He will accomplish it. So Moses, just imagine putting yourself in that spot. So then Moses goes up the mountain. And this is kind of where I picture, like, Moses just looks at everybody and says, stay here. Stay here. Because Moses probably has this real sense of anticipation. Right? Maybe it's that feeling of the wedding day, right? You've been waiting for this day to arrive, and everybody's got the jitters. Everyone's excited, right? The groom, he's just like anxious and like walking back and forth. The bride, she's in the back room doing whatever brides do, right? You got like all that stuff going on. And Moses, what does he do? He doesn't care about rules and tradition. He just goes up the mountain. He just heads for it. And Yahweh called to him from the mountain and said, this is what you are to say to the house of Jacob and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did in Egypt and how I carried you on vultures' wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you truly hear and obey my voice and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured representative above all peoples, for the whole earth is mine. You will be my kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. And there's a few things in there that I think are super beneficial and helpful, because this is repeated later in the Bible, right? As you go through different books of the Bible, you see these phrases reused again and again. But first off, he says, say to Jacob, say to Israel. What this is doing is this is marking in that moment. You were this way, now you're this way. In the same way that when a bride, her name is changed, or historically, her name is changed when she gets married, right? There's that name change with this covenant. They were Jacob. Now they're Israel. So this is supposed to be that transition moment where in their minds, everything is now different. That you were this way, now you are that way. And they were carried on vultures' wings. Now, some of you are going to kind of irk at that because you're like, it's supposed to be eagles. The eagles isn't actually the best translation, believe it or not. It's actually vultures. And in that region, it's actually a griffin vulture. And because I wanted to do some research, because here's the thing, a lot of people give you false information when it comes to these kinds of phrases, okay? So, because what it says later is that he carried you on vultures' wings. So I actually did a ton of research. Do vultures, do eagles, do any birds carry their young on their back? No. Okay? So that doesn't mean that this is a broken metaphor, because the reason why is because when we say, like, God is my rock, right? The one way I've heard someone explain it is when we say God is my rock, it doesn't mean he's like dull and lifeless, and if you throw him at someone, it'll hurt, right? It's God is he's my foundation, right? He's solid. I can trust him. He is a lion. Doesn't mean that he's looking to devour you, right? That's how the enemy is described. Like a lion prowling around, roaring, looking for someone to devour. But we also call God a lion, in that he's powerful. He's significant, right? So when we see the word vulture, it's that he carries them on vulture's wing, because the griffin vulture, it's the biggest bird in the region, has a 9-foot wingspan, roughly. Some can go a little bit bigger, some are a little bit smaller, but it's the biggest one. Golden eagles are the next one in that area. But griffin vultures, what they do is they nest on the rocks up high. And all they literally have to do is, because of the way the heat works in that region, all they have to do is put out their wings and they take off into an ease of the soar. And they can just go for hours without flapping. Purely because of the heat, because the way their wings are structured, they can just go. And so it's with ease and gentleness that God brought them out of Egypt. That's the imagery that is trying to convey. Now, in our minds, as we see all the signs and wonders, was it easy? Was this whole journey easy? No, they saw people die. There was animals that were sick, and there was like craziness. But in God's mind, what was brutal for us, maybe tense moments for them, God's just like, I got this. Go on. And then the other thing is that he brought them to himself. They keep saying, what'd you bring us to this desert? You brought us here to die, right? We have no food. We got no water. You were going to die here. But God's saying, no, I brought you to myself. And sometimes when God's bringing you to where he wants you to go, you feel like a desert because you're in an exodus. You're leaving that one way and you're now going into the next. And then he says this, if you hear and obey me, if you listen to me. And these are the kind of the words that in Scripture oftentimes we're like, this is hard. Because more often than not, we see what is called a conditional covenant. If you do this, then I will. So if Israel serves him, and actually listens, right? Because again, we've had that moment with our kids, right? We had this yesterday with our kids. We're yelling at them to clean their room. Okay. 5 minutes later, are you cleaning your room? No. Did you hear me? Yes. What were you supposed to do? Clean our room. We know they heard us, but they didn't hear us. They didn't actually obey. They didn't actually listen. Right? And that's what this is talking about. If you listen, if you do what I tell you to do, if you live the way that I'm calling you to live, then you will be my treasured representatives. Because I have standards for my people. You will be my treasured representatives. You will be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. So what does this mean? A kingdom of priests. They're going to have a specific role, mediators between men and God as an entire nation. This is for everybody. There's going to be a technical priesthood that comes later, but God's looking at the people and he's saying, you guys are my representatives. A holy nation. You are not supposed to be like everyone else. The other nations, they're led by idols. They carry their idols. They walk their idols around. But when it says that I carried you like a vulture, I carried you. You are to be different. You are not like everyone else. And so this is where he's completely pulls this language. If you've read the New Testament, you look in the book of 1 Peter, Peter just literally just goes, donk, and just drops it in and says what was true for Israel is true for us. It's just that it's been repurposed, repackaged. The exact same mission, it's just broader. Because as we talked about in the book of Romans, if you remember that study, in Romans chapter 11, it says that the Gentiles, they're grafted into Israel. We become a part of what God was already doing. And so in this way, that's how this continues. Therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and deceit, hypocrisy, envy, slander of every kind. We all know that the church is really good at getting rid of those things, right? Get rid of all of this stuff. If you're lying, stop. If you're being a hypocrite, stop. If you got malice, if you got that anger in your heart, stop. Get rid of it. Like newborn babies, crave spiritual milk so that by it you may grow up in your salvation. Right? This is where when you have a young Christian versus an older Christian, right? The young Christian is like, I want to understand. I want to grow. I want to learn. That's natural. Why? Because they're a baby in the faith. That's why when John later says, return back to your first love in the book of Revelation, right? Come back to that moment. That's the good part, where you're wanting to grow, where you're wanting to learn, where you're just like, yeah, you know what? Those things, they don't bother. I'm not going to engage with that because I'm a new creation. I'm just operating in that fresh space so that by you may grow in your salvation. Now that you have tasted that Yahweh is good, as you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans, but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stones, you are to be like Jesus, are being built into a spiritual house. What is that spiritual house called? The church. You're being built into the church to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. But, here we go. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, his treasured representatives. Because that's what that means. That you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into this wonderful light. We have a role to play in this world. We got a job to do. And as you go through the rest of this chapter, what you end up seeing is God saying to them, you're supposed to be different. You're supposed to be unique. 3 times he says, don't come barging up the mountain. Don't do it. If you do, there's a command that you're supposed to kill whoever goes up, even animals. Like nothing's supposed to touch the mountain. This is a holy space. Why? Because it's Yahweh. It's the God of the universe, the King of kings, the Lord of lords. And he has shown up. He's been leading the nation by a pillar of smoke and a pillar of fire. He's been leading them constantly. And at the very end of Exodus, it says he always was there doing this until they left, until they entered the promised land. That pillar was there. And he led them the entire time. There's not supposed to be like everyone else. It's not about where Moses wants to go, who's the leader. He's the main guy. We just literally read about him and how he was supposed to start delegating these jobs because he was just taking everything on himself. You're not supposed to be like everyone else. You're supposed to be different. You're a holy nation. You are set apart. So church, that's the thing. As the church, we are set apart. We are the priesthood, whether you're new in the faith or whether you're old in the faith, whether you are paid or unpaid. We are all actively serving in this kingdom. We have a role to play. It's going to look different, right? Because I don't know if you know this, but back when the temple was established, that they did have different roles. And in fact, when it was even being built, as we're going to see, different people performed different roles. Some people were building, some people were giving, some people were sewing, some people were crafting with metal, right? Doing metallurgy. Right? You have all these different people serving Yahweh, being examples, being the priests. And they're supposed to stand out like a sore thumb among the nations, but in a positive way. So it's a happy sore thumb. But it's that idea where they're to be different, they're to be unique. And oftentimes the church, we get this idea in our head where we need to kind of embrace the ways of the world. We need to do the things that the world does, where we want to be like everyone else because we don't want to make things awkward. Whereas God, he embraces the awkward. Do we embrace the awkward as priests, okay? So again, as a pastor, right, there's those moments where I walk into an area and everyone changes how they operate if they know I'm a pastor. Okay? And I think if you're a pastor, you've experienced stuff like this before, or been in ministry, you've experienced this stuff before, where you get to know a bunch of people and none of them know you're a pastor. And so they're like cussing and swearing around you all the time, and they just let it fly. And then finally, one day, someone has the gall to ask, what do you do for a living? It's like, I'm a pastor. And then all of a sudden, everybody stops swearing. And they get really awkward and really weird about it. And they're like, oh. Okay. Divine intervention, right? It's supposed to be, you become different. But here's the thing. As the church, we're supposed to be that. We're different. We walk into a room, we change the atmosphere because we're different. We're his chosen representatives. But this is where, again, you see that Paul uses this language, that we are his ambassadors. We have an active role to play in this world, a holy nation. Right? And this is where, again, we've talked about this a little bit, but a holy nation. So we're a kingdom of priests, but we're a holy nation. We are called foreigners in this world. We don't belong here. We are of another kingdom. Yes, you might be a Canadian citizen. Maybe you're not. I don't know. But if you're with Jesus, that's your primary citizenship. That's who you live for. That's who you serve. Do you vote in the elections, and can you have political opinions and all? Fine. But who do you serve? Who's the boss? Whose kingdom are you actually a part of? where you lay down your rights, you lay down your pride, and you serve the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And you're like, I mean, I can think that Canada is like one of the greatest nations ever. Maybe I've completely changed my opinion in the last while. I don't know. But we're to be different. We don't belong here. We're a holy nation. So when there's all the different churches, right, if they love and serve Jesus, like the God of the Bible, they're in that kingdom too. And this is where, like, within kingdoms, you have different parties, you got different interests, you have people with different focuses. Scripture calls us to be of one mind and one heart. We're called to be unified. Like, that's supposed to be our like one of our chief desires, is being unified. Why? Because we're a holy nation. We're not supposed to be like everyone else. We can have opinions about how to approach things, right? But like when it comes to the serving in the kingdom, are we looking for opportunities to kick people out of the kingdom? Right? Do people disagree with us a little bit theologically? Right? Like your thoughts on God. Right? Do we disagree? Or are we trying to be unified? Because right now, our world is really good at showing us what it looks like to not be unified. As the church, we need to start to learn how to be far more unified. And not just like be passive. It means actively engaging with being unified. Like, how do we come together? When we come together, do we do it to love one another? Do we do it to fulfill the purposes of God in our lives? Like, why are we doing this? Because you're his special possession. You're his treasured representative. If you do what he tells you to do, he's making you this. So maybe you're thinking, like, God, what's the role that you have for me? What am I supposed to do? I don't know your will for my life. I'm just doing this. I've experienced this. Multiple times, the Bible tells you exactly what you're called to do, who you're called to be. It's not an island unto yourself. It's as the church, as a holy nation, being his treasured representatives, being his ambassadors, being people who tell people about Jesus, who tell people about God. We're his representatives. You can't have a representative and God say, like, okay, you're mine, but you can't do anything with it. People don't like it when you talk about religion. People don't like it when you talk about things like money and all that. They just get really awkward, so don't do it. God is the God of the awkward, so we're supposed to do it. When we go in, we're going to have those moments where we make people feel awkward. And I want to let you know that it's okay to feel awkward. Awkward's okay. Because awkward means that there's something different happening than what was before. The church needs to get far better at embracing the awkward. Embracing the new, embracing the different. But again, this is all hinged on those words. If you listen to me. If you do what I tell you to do. And so again, because I'm just going to rush through this, but it's setting up for what comes next. Because what comes after this is the 10 Commandments. And you start getting into the other parts of the law. And God says, you are to be different. Once you were a people, but now you are a people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you've received mercy. So Moses went back and summoned the elders and the people and set before them the words of Yahweh had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together. So everyone was in on this. We will do everything Yahweh has said. So that's an awkward moment, just so you guys know, because that's going to come up later. Right? How many times have we all said, like, I'm going to do what Jesus wants me to do? Maybe you go to a youth convention or to a camp, right? And you're like, I'm going to do what Jesus wants me to do. You go to church camp or you go to some conference. You're like, I'm going to do what Jesus wants me to do. We've agreed to what God's called us to do. And then you know what happened after. And it's no different because people are people. Yahweh said to Moses, I'm going to come to you in a dense cloud so that the people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you. Moses is being told by God, I want the people to trust you because they know you hear me. Then Moses told Yahweh what the people had said, that they agreed, like, we're in this. And Yahweh said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them, set them apart, make them different. And today and tomorrow, have them wash their clothes and be ready by the third day, because something's going to happen on the third day. There's going to be a revelation of God on the third day. Can anybody think of how God works right now, right? What happens, that's to be pretty significant in our faith, that happens on the third day. Resurrection. Now, this isn't about the resurrection. It just shows that God works in patterns, right? Because there's something about this. And God cares. God shows up and does something even more on the third day. Because on that day, Yahweh will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. But he's saying to them, will you listen? Will you obey? You guys have agreed to obey. I've said, don't come near the mountain. Okay? So I'm not going to read it all right now. But don't come near the mountain. Stay away. Will you listen? Will you not come near the mountain? Don't come near the mountain. You're at the foot of the mountain. You'll be able to hear what's going on. You'll be able to see what's going on. Don't come on the mountain. Don't rush in. Stay there. Wait. So maybe today you're in one of these situations where you're realizing you have a purpose, that God has a plan for you, that he wants to work in, through, and around you. Maybe you're in that situation where you're waiting to see what God's revelation is going to be. Because you're like, you know what, I'm in, I'm listening, I'm obeying. But right now, it's that waiting period. And you're like, what's the thing that's coming? Because I don't know. For these guys, we know it's the 10 Commandments. And we're going to start looking at those next week. But for you, what is it? What's going on? What's going on in your heart? What's going on in your mind? What's going on in your life? Carissa, can you come back up? So I'm going to have everybody stand right now. And what I would like you to do is just consider, where are you at? Are you waiting for that next step? Let me just sing the last song. Are you needing to be unleashed? What do you need right now? Are you waiting? You just go for it. What's going on? So just take a moment, close your eyes, and if there's something, just start talking with God about it, because he said, I'm with you. I'll never leave you nor forsake you.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. Never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. Never stop working. Never stop working.
Amen. So maybe today you need to tell somebody. Right? That's typically a good idea. We're all in different spots, but the good news is we're going to be connecting after. So maybe you need to talk to somebody about where you're at, about what God's doing. That maybe you're dealing with trying to figure out how to be a better ambassador, being a better representative in the kingdom. Maybe there's a struggle of just being a holy nation, right? And maybe you need to talk to somebody because you've been kind of working against the nation. Maybe you're in that season of waiting and you need to just talk with somebody, and maybe you just need prayer about it. So as we meet, as we hang out, if that's on your heart and your mind, talk with somebody. But even if it isn't, then just feel free to talk after somebody. Like if you can't talk about it now, talk to somebody after and just work through it. And so anyway, I want to thank you so much though for being here. And please stick around, join us. There's those little treats and the goodies, and for the kids and for adults too. So enjoy, and just let's be the church. Let's be that holy nation. Let's be united together and do that. And if you have any thoughts or questions about anything we've talked about today, you are free to ask, and we can hash it out. Otherwise, God bless you, and we'll see you on the other side of the building, just over there through the doors. All right, and go.